What grade does Judah Mintz deserve for this season? Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome everyone into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today is all about Judah Mintz, because as of right now, Judah Mintz is still with Syracuse. He has not entered his name into the transfer portal just yet. He has not said whether or not he's going to declare for the NBA draft or whether he might declare for another pro league out there. We don't know. As of right now, he still remains a member of Syracuse. And with that being said, that means we are going to grade him on his last season and whether or not we actually want him back. And spoiler alert, we want Judah Mintz to come back to Syracuse this year because he's pretty good. And also, there's a lot more good than bad with Judah Mintz. We're going to start with the good. Coming into the season, Judah Mintz was expected to be the team's best player. He was expected to take a sophomore jump after a pretty terrific freshman season where he was second in Freshman of the Year voting, only behind Kyle Filipowski. He was an all-ACC freshman. He was on the National Player of the Year watch list. Judah Mintz had all the potential in the world coming into this season. Some mock drafts were saying he might be a lottery pick. And whether or not he lived up to those expectations, we can not quite, but he was the team's most consistent player night in and night out. And he was the best player for Syracuse as we expected this season. And he did take a jump. He had 17 20-plus point games this year. 17. So that's well over half the games. We're not well over, just over half, right? Over half the time, this guy was getting you 20 a night. At least 20. On top of that, last year, only 9. So he basically doubled his 20-plus point games from his freshman season to his sophomore season. Was he the spark plug of the team? No. Was he the glue guy? No. Judah's role for this year was to be the team's leading scorer and overall the best player on the team. And you cannot argue with me that there's anyone on the team right now that's better than him. So he accomplished that. He was second team all ACC, which should he have been first team? I think that was the correct decision to leave him on the second team. But the point being, yeah, he's not in the National Player of the Year conversation. Judah Mintz is not quite there yet. But at the same time, he did make an all-ACC team, which he didn't do his freshman season. He didn't do it his freshman year. And he had a very strong case to be on the first team. It was, as I said, it was basically between him and Hunter Salas. They gave it to Salas. You can argue it should have gone to Mintz. Point being is that it was very close. He also got to the free throw line at just an absurd clip, shooting over 8 free throws a game. He's a guard. He is incredible when he is going to the basket. The way he can kind of contort his body He can finish in traffic. He's not the biggest dude in the world. And it's even more impressive with the fact that he's not a great outside shooter, which we will get to, and that's kind of the knock on Judah Mintz, is that he's not a great outside shooter. But the fact that he can still get to the basket, even though teams can kind of sag off of him, is highly, highly impressive. Just absurdly impressive. So overall with Judah Mintz and the good that he brought this season, was he the team's best player? Yes, he was. He was definitely the team's best player. Whether you thought he might have been a ball hog or not, he was the team's best. He was second team All-ACC. He wasn't necessarily National Player of the Year, but second team All-ACC with a pretty strong case to be on the first team is pretty good. He had 17 20-plus point games compared to 9 in his freshman season. I'd say that's pretty good, having 17 20-plus point games. And by the way, when he scored 20-plus, Syracuse was 12-5. When he didn't, Syracuse was 8-7. And you can't expect a guy to score 20-plus every single night. So that goes to show you, when he was scoring, his team was winning a lot more than not. By the way, another point that I failed to mention, but I will mention it now. He was third in the ACC in assists per game. I know he gets a lot of knock for the fact that he's kind of a ball hog. Well, he's still third in the conference in assists per game. And also, who else do you want with the ball on this team? Who else do you want with the ball? How many players on Syracuse right now can actually create their own shot? Judah Mintz can. We know J.J. Starling can. Who else? I wouldn't say Chris Bell. He's a very good shooter, but he doesn't necessarily create his own shot. I don't think there's anyone else really on the team that can do it. Quadir Copeland could, but he's no longer here. All I'm saying is that Judah Mintz had the ball a lot in his hands, and it was deserved. There was a lot more good with him than there was bad. But having said that, there's still one big knock with him that ultimately is going to cost him in the final grade, which I will get to at the end. Yes, you're going to have to stick to the end to actually get to the grade. We're going to discuss the bad of Judah Mintz from last season right after this. Bracket already busted, tired of the same old daily fantasy grind where you make a roster, cross your fingers, and hope for the best, or losing on the last leg of your pick'em entry? Introducing Bettor Together, the first cooperative daily fantasy platform where teamwork triumphs talent and you can play with your friends, not against them. Pick more or less on real-time player stats, strategize with your partner to boost your odds, and climb the leaderboard together. So grab a friend and join the social DFS movement. Hey, you can even play with me. We can team up and beat the competition. My username is JPH52. Send me a friend request and let's get started. Download Bettor Together now from the App Store and sign up using promo code LOCKEDON for a chance to win your share of over $1,000 in cash prizes. Remember the code LOCKEDON because winning alone is fun, but it's better together. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit. Only available to U.S. customers. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the streaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube on the Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Welcome back, everyone, into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and we're discussing Judah Mintz's grade for this season, where he was the team's best player. And while he might not have been in the National Player of the Year conversation, certainly he did a lot more good than bad. And we talked all about that. But now it's time for the little bit of a knock on him. I don't think you guys need me to tell you what the Achilles heel of Judah Mintz is. But if you're unfamiliar, I'll tell you. Shooting. That's been his one thing that if he could just figure it out, he would be so much better, A, and B, his NBA potential will go through the roof. Judah Mintz last season, or really, I was going to say this season, shot less than 30% from the three-point line. He actually got worse from the three-point line than in his freshman season, where he barely cracked 30%. And part of the reason why Judah Mintz before the year had so much hype was because if he could just elevate his three-point shot by a few percentage points, go from 30% to 33%, he could be a lottery pick in the NBA draft. I truly believe he has that potential. He's got the size for a point guard. He's got the athleticism, his ability to get to the basket. He can hit his free throws. I know he kind of went through a stretch where he wasn't hitting them, but overall for the season, he was close to 80% from the free throw line. He's a pretty good defender as well. All the tools, it's just the shooting. It's just that. He only had one game this entire year, one, where he hit more than 2 threes. That's it. It came early in the year against Cornell, where he hit 5 triples. And that was it. Guys, that's, quite frankly, that's just not good enough. That's the one real knock I have on him. That's what kind of bumps his grade down. He also had a disciplinary situation where he didn't start the Boston College game. I believe he sat like the first 9 minutes and then played every other minute after that. It didn't end up being a big deal. Coach Autry swept it under the rug after the game. Everything was fine, but it's something to kind of note. But really, it's, my goodness, how good would Syracuse have been this year had Judah Mintz had an average to a slightly above average three-point shot? I'm not blaming Judah Mintz for this team not making the tournament. In fact, he's the only real reason why this team had a chance. I find it kind of weird that we always blame the best player. Having said that, I believe this team is in the tournament if Judah Mintz was a 35% three-point shooter. Just the way it would open up the floor. Teams wouldn't necessarily be able to all key in on just Chris Bell. They wouldn't. So Chris Bell would get more open shots. Judah Mintz would have even more of a runway to get to the basket. He can also kick the ball out to J.J. Starling, who can maybe get more open shots because of it. There was a reason why this team didn't have great shooting, and that's because, well, there was only one great shooter. Or rather, I should say, they didn't have great floor spacing, and that's because they only had one. They had one guy who can space the floor. Judah Mintz just wasn't that guy this year. We hoped that he could ultimately take that next step in his development there. And he couldn't. And that's ultimately the reason why, if he declares for the NBA draft and doesn't go drafted and doesn't get drafted, or decides to come back to Syracuse or transfers, the point being is that it's because of his shooting. He has got to work on that for next season, whether it's with Syracuse, with another college, whether he's going pro. He has got to figure out that jump shot, because I'm telling you guys, he has all the potential in the world. He's got all of it. He just has to figure out how to hit a shot from distance. So, having said that, we discussed the good, we discussed the bad, which was really one thing for Judah. Now it's time to give the grade. This week's March Madness Bracket Highlight is brought to you by our friends at Nissan. Each week, we're picking one team that stands out, a team that's pushed it further than the rest. Just like any of the all-new 2024 Nissan SUVs, these guys were able to take it to the next level. The Oregon Ducks are obviously this week's Nissan Rogue. The team absolutely surprised us all with a powerful performance in the final Pac-12 tournament, punching their ticket to the big dance. They say, win life, go Rogue, and that's exactly what the Ducks have done here. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. All right, everyone. It's time to get to the grade for Judah Mintz's season, the 2023-2024 campaign. Judah Mintz deserves a B+. That is the grade that he gets from me. Ultimately, he had a lot more pros than he had cons. We have discussed them at length. And I think that Judah Mintz is a really good player. And he was the best player on the team this year. And by the way, I said it off the top, we don't want to live in a world without Judah Mintz on the team next season. We don't. I think we need him. We really do. I think we really need this guy come back. But the reason why it's a B+ and not in the A range, well, for starters, we talked about, well, he's not a great shooter. He did not really improve it. In fact, it got worse this season from the three-point line. But also, I can't give him an A or an A- because this team did not make the tournament. And maybe that's not fair. And maybe it's not fair, and I get it. Because the tournament, it's a team thing. It's about the team. But he was the best player. He did have the most influence on pretty much every single game that he played for Syracuse. And they're not in the tournament. It's not all his fault. But they're not in it. I can't give you an A. I'm sorry, I can't. That's my take on it. He cannot get an A because of the shooting. And because maybe if his shooting was better, this team would be in the tournament. and the fact that this team isn't there to begin with. They're not. So to recap everything, let's recap all of Judah Mintz and why he gets a B+ from me. Let's do it. He was the team's best player. That's for certain. He had 17 20-plus point games. That was about double than his freshman season. So that's improvement right there from scoring. Okay, while he was not improving his shooting, he did improve his scoring. And it correlated to wins and losses. 12-5 when he scored 20 points, Syracuse was 12-5. When he didn't, they were basically 500, 8-7. He averaged 4 assists per game, and people would tell me he's a ball hog, but at the same time, that's third in the ACC. So is everyone a ball hog? I don't know. Plus, I also discussed how, you know what? You want the ball in his hands anyway. I don't have a problem with it. He was second team All-ACC with a strong case to be on the first team. It was close, but he had a strong case for it. He's incredible at attacking the basket. He can knock down his free throws aside from a weird stretch midway through the year where it seemed like he had the yips at the line. Ultimately, Judah Mintz was the most consistent player on this team night in and night out. Whether he was the best player on the floor for Syracuse every night, that's not necessarily the case, but you pretty much can count on him to score 15 all the time. And that's incredibly valuable. Be the leading scorer. But the cons, there's one main one that kind of gets swept under the rug, which isn't really that big of a deal, and one that's more team-oriented, but it's going to knock down everyone in their player grades. Shooting has definitely been an issue for Judah Mintz, and if he was a better shooter, this team, I think, would be in the tournament right now. I really believe that. If he was 35% from the three-point line, they're in the tournament. He also had a little bit of a disciplinary issue with Syracuse, but it ultimately wasn't that big of a deal. Coach Autry said after the game against Boston College, it was the home game against Boston College, and that he didn't start. It wasn't that big of a deal. But kind of have to look at that and say, I'd rather you not have any disciplinary issues on the team. But it wasn't that big of a deal. Honestly, it doesn't knock his grade that much. If you were to say on a scale of 0 to 100, maybe by a couple points. And finally, they're not in March Madness. They're not in March Madness. And you can't get an A as the team's best player when your team is not in the field of 68. You just can't get it. That's it for grading Judah Mintz. I ultimately say he gets a B+. And we want him back. As at the time of this recording, he's still a member for Syracuse. He's still here. And there's kind of this false hope feeling in me right now, which is he changed his profile pic from him and Copeland to just him. Maybe I'm just reading too much into it. Maybe he's just trolling us, but it honestly makes me maybe think he's coming back. And we want him back being the starting point guard day one for next season. We really do. We need this guy. Judah Mintz, B+, and hopefully next year he returns to Syracuse and gets an A+. He improves the three-point shot. This team makes the tournament, maybe even goes on a deep run in the tournament, and I would be happy to hand Judah Mintz an A+ on his way into the NBA draft. Still plenty to get to here in the world of Syracuse. The transfer portal is still very much open. There hasn't been much news recently for Syracuse over the last day or two. But certainly here on Locked On, we're going to keep an eye on it. The plan for tomorrow is to grade J.J. Starling and his season. It's certainly an interesting one. He had an up and down year, but kind of like how Quadir Copeland decided to transfer on a Monday night. That ended up changing or bumping down every single episode that I had planned for this week because we had to talk about Quadir Copeland's departure. Judah Mintz, we might be hearing from him soon. We don't know. Point being is, there's breaking news here on Locked On Syracuse. We're going to cover it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. If you like this video, click that like button. And if you really liked it, subscribe to the channel and turn on those notifications so you know right away when we're dropping the next podcast. And also a quick shout out. Monday was the highest viewed day in Locked On Syracuse history. So proud of it. Thank you guys, everyone, for the support. It's been almost a month since I have taken over here. Just want to say thank you very much. And I promise only to get better from here. So that being said, we are going to be back on Thursday, whether it's grading JJ Starling or talking about potential breaking news. We got you covered here on Locked On Syracuse.